imagine a world where a single rumor could shatter a woman's life, not just her body, but her identity, her future, her very existence. In medieval Europe, women weren't just silenced, they were broken in ways history dares not speak aloud. Today, we uncover a chilling truth: punishments designed to erase womanhood itself, leaving scars deeper than flesh. If this grips your soul, hit that asterisk button to honor these forgotten voices. Share this with someone who craves hidden truths. And subscribe to fuel our mission of revealing stories that empower us all. Let's dive into this dark, motivating tale, a journey through pain and resilience that inspires us to fight for justice. Your engagement can spark change, so let's uncover the past to build a stronger future together. In medieval Europe, a woman's worth was bound to her purity, obedience, and role as a mother. But what happened when society turned her existence into a weapon against her? We often hear of men facing brutal punishments, like castration for crimes or service. Yet, history hides a darker truth. Women endured equally cruel fates, not through precise acts, but through savage, deliberate destruction. These weren't mere penalties. They were attempts to strip women of their identity, silence their strength, and make them warnings for others. These acts echoed across dungeons, courtrooms, and public squares, especially in times of war, religious zeal, or personal vengeance, leaving women broken in body and spirit. The concept of castration is often tied to men, a defined act with a clear purpose. For women, it was far more shadowy, brutal, and ignored. It wasn't a legal punishment recorded in law books or formalized like male punishments. Instead, it existed in the margins, driven by fear, revenge, and domination. Women accused of defying norms, whether through infidelity, independence, or mere suspicion, faced punishments that targeted their womanhood itself. The intent was unmistakable: to erase what made them valuable in society's eyes, to punish them for daring to exist outside rigid boundaries. These acts weren't just about inflicting pain. They were about humiliation, about robbing women of their dignity and place in the world. During times of religious fervor, like witch trials, or in moments of personal vendetta, women endured tortures meant to destroy their essence. These weren't isolated cases, but part of a broader system where women's lives were controlled through fear and shame. The perpetrators, whether husbands, priests, or mobs, sought to break not just the body, but the spirit, ensuring the woman could never reclaim her power. Unlike male punishments, these acts were rarely documented. Why? Because they were meant to vanish, carried out in secret dungeons, behind closed doors, or at the whim of powerful men with no one to answer to. The women who suffered weren't always criminals. Many were targeted for being too outspoken, too beautiful, or simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. A woman who drew attention, intentionally or not, could find herself punished not for her actions, but for her existence. This wasn't justice, it was control, a desperate attempt to suppress the one thing that terrified medieval society. A woman who knew her own strength. These stories, though buried, demand our attention. They remind us of the resilience of those who endured and the urgency of uncovering history's darkest truths. If this hidden history stirs your passion for justice, like this video to stand with these women. Share it to spread their stories. And subscribe to join a community dedicated to empowering narratives. Your support fuels our mission to keep these voices alive. Let's motivate each other to learn, grow, and fight for a world where no one's identity is stolen. Medieval Europe was a world ruled not just by kings, but by beliefs that shaped every corner of life. Women were trapped in a system that saw them as lesser, weak, morally fragile, and spiritually suspect. The church, a towering force, cast women as daughters of Eve, the original sinner who led humanity astray. This belief painted women as dangerous, their very existence a potential threat to the moral order. Their lives weren't their own. They belonged to their fathers, husbands, or God. Any woman who stepped outside these boundaries was seen not as brave, but as a peril to society. Purity was the heart of a woman's value. Before marriage, her chastity was guarded like a sacred relic. In marriage, her loyalty was demanded without question. Obedience to her husband, the church, and society was enforced with unrelenting force. Men who broke rules might face fines, imprisonment, or public shame. But for women, the consequences were far harsher. A woman accused of rebellion, infidelity, or even being a victim of violence could find herself blamed and punished. The logic was cruel. Her defiance, real or imagined, was a crime against the men who controlled her and the divine order they upheld. Punishments for women were often public, designed to humiliate and deter. In some regions, women accused of moral failings were paraded through streets, their heads shaved, their dignity stripped away. Others were forced to wear devices like the scold's bridle, a metal contraption that silenced outspoken voices. But when shame wasn't enough, punishments turned darker. The goal shifted from correction to destruction, targeting the very essence of what society valued in women. These acts weren't just about pain. They were about erasing identity, ensuring a woman could never reclaim her place. Why was this so extreme? Because in a society obsessed with control, a woman who claimed her own power was a threat to the entire system. Religious doctrine fueled this fear, portraying women's independence as a gateway to sin. The church, wielding immense authority, justified punishments as acts of moral cleansing. Secular powers, often intertwined with religious ones, followed suit, using violence to enforce rigid gender roles. Whether by vengeful husbands, zealous priests, or angry mobs, these acts sent a clear message. Step out of line, and you'll be unmade. This wasn't just physical punishment, it was psychological warfare. Women were made examples, their suffering a warning to others. Public spectacles, whether executions or shamming rituals, reinforced submission. The message was unmistakable. A woman's role was to obey, to remain pure, to exist for others. Anything else invited destruction. These practices, though rarely written down, were a dark undercurrent in medieval Europe, shaping how women were seen and treated for centuries. Consider the broader context. Medieval society was a hierarchy built on control. Men held power in homes, courts, and churches, while women were expected to submit. Any deviation, whether speaking too freely, defying a husband, or simply existing outside norms, could lead to punishment. These acts weren't just about individual women, they were about controlling half the population. The fear of a woman's power wasn't abstract, it was visceral, rooted in beliefs that saw women as both fragile and dangerous. If this history inspires you to fight for a world where no one's worth is tied to control, asterisk, like this video, to honor the resilience of these women. Asterisk, share it to educate others. And subscribe asterisk to keep these stories alive. Your engagement motivates us to uncover more truths and build a future where everyone's identity is respected. If medieval Europe had a crucible for women's suffering, it was the witch trials. From the 15th to 17th centuries, a toxic mix of religion, superstition, and misogyny made being a woman a dangerous act. Being different, outspoken, independent, or simply unlucky was a death sentence. Thousands of women across Europe were accused of witchcraft, often on whispers or baseless suspicions. A rumor in the village could lead to a trial, and trials often ended in fire, rope, or iron. But before the execution came the interrogation, where the true horror unfolded. Church inquisitors, cloaked in holy authority, saw women as vessels for evil. They believed Satan marked their bodies, leaving signs invisible to the untrained eye. These searches weren't just invasive, they were dehumanizing. Women were stripped in cold, stone chambers, their dignity torn away by men claiming divine purpose. The process was meant to break the spirit, to reduce a woman to nothing before her fate was sealed. But it didn't stop there. Interrogations often turned to torture, designed not just to extract confessions, but to punish the supposed sin within. Torture was brutal, targeting a woman's identity to cleanse her. The goal was to destroy what made her a woman in society's eyes, to make her an example of what happened to those who defied the church's vision. These acts were justified as holy work, a perverse logic that turned violence into salvation. Clergymen believed they were saving souls by destroying lives. The reality was far uglier. This was about control, about silencing women who didn't fit the mold of purity and submission. No one was safe. A widow living alone, a healer with herbal knowledge, a woman with too many pets, all could be labeled witches. Even young girls weren't spared. Some died from the torture before reaching trial. Others survived only to face execution. The accusations were rarely about evidence. They were about fear. A woman who was too beautiful, too outspoken, or too independent was a threat. Witch hunts gave society permission to punish women publicly, calling it justice. They turned women's lives into battlegrounds where control was won through pain. But not all horrors were religious. Some punishments were political or personal. A jealous husband, a vengeful lord, or a community seeking a scapegoat could target a woman's identity, marking her as ruined forever. In some regions, laws allowed for public shamming, or worse, for crimes like infidelity, ensuring a woman's disgrace was permanent. These acts, whether driven by faith or fury, were about one thing: stripping women of their power. Consider the scale. Estimates suggest 40,000 to 60,000 people, mostly women, were executed as witches across Europe. Each case was a tragedy, a life destroyed by fear and control. These women weren't witches. They were midwives, mothers, daughters, women who dared to exist outside society's rigid rules. Their stories remind us of the cost of conformity and the strength it took to endure. If these stories ignite your passion for justice, like this video to stand with these women. Share it to spread their stories. And subscribe to join a movement that honors resilience and fights for equality. Let's motivate each other to keep history's lessons alive and build a world where no one is punished for who they are. Punishments varied across Europe, shaped by local laws and customs. In England, under laws influenced by King Censored, women accused of moral failings faced disfiguring punishments that marked them as outcasts, ensuring they'd never regain social standing. In France and Germany, punishments for sexual crimes evolved from lethal to humiliating, but the intent remained: to control and shame. Women might be whipped, publicly disgraced, or marked in ways that destroyed their identity. Sicily, under Frederick II, laws prescribed disfigurement for women accused of infidelity, linking punishment to moral failure. Byzantine influences introduced practices that permanently marked women, signaling their ruin. In Frisian law, some records suggest compensation for injuries that affected a woman's value, though these were rare and male-focused. During Swiss witch hunts, interrogations were particularly cruel, with searches for devil's marks becoming excuses for violence. Consider Joan of Arc, whose defiance as a woman in a man's role led to her trial and execution. Her story shows how women who challenged norms were punished, their lives targeted as symbols of rebellion. Lesser-known women, like midwives or healers, faced similar fates, accused of witchcraft for their knowledge. These cases weren't just about individuals, they were warnings to all women. The psychological toll was immense. Survivors faced a lifetime of trauma with no support. They were blamed for their suffering, seen as tainted by sin. This mirrors modern struggles with victim blaming, showing how history's shadows linger. If this history inspires you to fight for justice, share and subscribe to keep these stories alive and motivate change. Surviving these punishments was only the beginning. In medieval society, a woman's value was tied to her purity and role as a mother. When those were taken, she was seen as nothing, a shell, unworthy of love or place. Survivors became outcasts, shunned by communities, abandoned by families, or hidden in convents. The church, preaching mercy, often turned away, viewing them as impure. Many became beggars, living on society's edges. Others were locked in asylums or poorhouses, their suffering ignored. The psychological trauma was unimaginable, no healing, just silence and shame. Some went mad, others became nuns to escape a world that rejected them. Some ended their lives, unable to bear the loss of identity. This history is a call to action. It reminds us to fight for a world where no one's worth is tied to control. If this moves you, like this video, share it to raise awareness, and subscribe to join a community dedicated to empowering stories. Your support motivates us to honor the past and build a better future.